Welcome back. A national poll shows young Americans are more politically engaged, hopeful about the country, and overwhelmingly approve of President Joe Biden.
That's according to a recent study done by Harvard's Institute of Politics. It surveyed more than 2,500 adults between 18 and 29 about the Biden administration's first 100 days, mental health, the Republican Party's future, and social media impacts.
Fewer than half the participants say they expect their lives to be better after the Biden administration, and nearly 1/3 of young Americans reported feeling less depressed or hopeless, with 28% of young adults saying they had suicidal thoughts. Joining us now to talk more about the study is Dee Hawkins-Hagler. She is a minister, college educator, and political strategist who worked in the Georgia General Assembly. Thank you for being here tonight on Prime.
Thank you for having me.
So the study shows that young millennials and members of Gen Z are strongly supportive of President Biden, that they're hopeful about the state of the country. They're also more likely to be politically engaged than their predecessors. What do you attribute their political interest and engagement to?
Well, I think that the Biden administration is providing hope for this demographic because it is speaking to the issues that are salient to this group. They're talking about making college more affordable, or even some of the plans are even thinking about maybe even free college education. They're talking about things such as climate control, and the young people are very concerned about climate control. Racial tensions in this country were on an all-time high, and the Biden administration has calmed down the temperature of all of that nonpartisan rhetoric in the way that it was being played out 4 years prior to now. And so I think this is resonating with young people, and they want to be more involved as it relates to the day-to-day operation of what's happening in this country politically.
And I want to talk about that racial tension you mentioned, because when it comes to young people of color, the change in attitude is striking. In 2017, just 18% of young Black respondents said they felt hopeful about the future of the country, compared with 72% this year. And this survey was taken in March. This was before the Derek Chauvin verdict and in the midst of this vast social unrest in this country.
Yes, just look at around 2017, Black youth were dealing with a lot of injustices that were happening in the community. People had seen a lot of people being killed at the hands of the police. They had seen disproportionate sentencing concerning a lot of the different crimes that were being committed in their communities. And then racial tension was at an all-time high. You had a rise of cultural groups like the Proud Boys and others who were talking a lot about white supremacy. And this was very disheartening for many young African Americans in this country who feel like they never could get a fair shake just because of who they are and where they were born.
But just in the past few months, haven't there been an equal number of police shootings and racial unrest?
It has, but the difference is we see a justice system now that is operating the way that it should, and the political culture and temperature of this country has simmered down quite a bit. I mean, every day during the Trump administration, people woke up to tweets. And they didn't even have to wake up. It was going on all times of the night. They were very incendiary. And then now we have a president who was just mellow and who's just trying to get America back on track. And then COVID also played a large part of why so many young people were disengaged, especially young African Americans, because it disproportionately hit African American communities as it related to catching COVID and then COVID deaths.
And I want to talk about the really troubling finding. More than a quarter of 18 to 29-year-olds said they have thoughts that they'd be better off dead or of hurting themselves in the past 2 weeks. That's a really sobering statistic.
Yes, and that's something we need to talk about in this country. We need to talk about mental health issues and the impact of post-traumatic stress. COVID in and of itself has created an environment of stress. We have all experienced it. And many of these students, they got to see their peers, whether they were in middle school, high school, college, and then to be totally separated away from people because of fear of COVID, and then racial tensions as well. Another pandemic is racism. So they were dealing with a physical health pandemic and a racial pandemic, and then uncertainty. A lot of the jobs that were lost during COVID, they were lost by people in their 18 to 29 year demographic. And many people, the only safe place they had was away from their home. They may not even had a home that was sustainable during COVID. So I could see young people dealing with these mental issues for years to come.
So quickly taken together, what do these findings say about the future of this country, the direction it's going?
Well, first of all, these findings to me are a breath of fresh air. It tells us that the country is going in the right direction because the young people are the pulse and heartbeat of this nation. And while our generation is the foundation, they are the heartbeat. And so now the fact that they see hope, I mean, they turned out in greater number for President Biden than they even did for President Obama, which we thought was the campaign of hope because he ran on that. I think is a great thing. And now we're going to see them more engaged on a daily basis. And I just feel like the best is yet to come because every positive and great movement that has started in this country started with young people.
It is a fascinating insight, the results of this survey. Dee Dawkins-Hagler, thank you for joining us and breaking it down for us.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night.